Kim. I'm here at my house. It's a different place in my house than where I normally am when I visit with you. I'm in my family room. I'm in front of the fireplace, and I've got some of my Easter decorations up, and so I thought this was the perfect place for me to be to share the story I want to share with you today. And it is called Miss Fanny's Hats. And this story isn't just for my preschool friends. I want your whole family to come in together. So get mom or dad, your sisters, your brothers, grandma, grandpa, whoever's at your house. How about we all come together and we have a story time together, not just my preschool friends. So you go get everybody together and then we'll start our story. Okay, are you ready? All right, let's see. Miss Fanny's Hats. Here's the title page, and it's written by Jan Karen. Miss Fanny has lots of hats, and each one is her favorite. See all of her hats? When she wears her red felt with a big feather, she looks in the mirror and says, "I just love this hat." And her friends at church say, "Miss Fanny, we just love that hat." And when she wears the green velour with the fancy pin, she says, "I sure do love this hat." And her Sunday school teacher says, "Miss Fanny, I sure do love that hat." There they are with her hats. But when she wears her famous pink straw with the silver roses, she always says, "I really love this hat." And everyone else really loves it too. Miss Fanny is 99 years old and very small. In fact, she's grown to be about the same size she was as a little girl. Miss Fanny and her daughter, Miss Wanda, live together, and Miss Wanda makes breakfast every morning. "Don't make me too much breakfast," Miss Fanny says, sitting on the sofa in her robe. Miss Wanda tries to mind because Miss Fanny is her mamma, but she forgets and brings her a piece of sausage, buttered toast with jelly, a scrambled egg, and a cup of herb tea. "Oh my, that's way too much," Miss Fanny always says, but then she goes and eats it all up. Every morning after breakfast, Miss Fanny reads her Bible. She has worn out 3 Bibles reading them over and over. Her favorite verse is, "With God, all things are possible." And there's Miss Fanny reading her Bible. Every Saturday, Miss Wanda washes Miss Fanny's hair. Miss Fanny takes off her robe and stands around in her slip, looking very tiny. Then she gets on a stool and sticks her head in the sink. Miss Wanda rubs the warm water and puts the shampoo on her mama's head and scrubs until it lathers up. Then she scrubs some more. "That feels good," says Miss Fanny. Miss Fanny getting her hair washed every Saturday. After she washes her mama's hair, Miss Wanda rolls it up in tight little curls all over her head. The curlers really are hard to sleep in, but Miss Fanny doesn't care one bit. She knows that when she goes to church the next day, she will look beautiful. On Sunday morning, Miss Fanny puts on a pretty dress and high-heel shoes. She puts on earrings and necklaces and lipstick and blush and powder. Next, Miss Wanda combs out her mama's hair, which is all nice and soft and gray, like the feathers of a dove. She is getting her hair brushed out. Then finally, after all that fussing with her hair, she goes and hides it under a hat. She gets her hair all done and then puts her hat on. Miss Fanny has 3 black hats, 2 red hats, 1 green hat, 2 white hats, 2 navy hats, 3 beige hats, 1 brown hat, and the famous pink straw with roses. Because she never wears the same one twice in a row, some people think that she has a whole closet full of hats, which of course she does. Look at all those hats. My goodness, she has lots of hats, doesn't she? One Sunday, Miss Fanny's handsome young preacher came up to her and said, "Miss Fanny, would you kindly give us one of your beautiful hats? It will go in the auction to fix up the church in time for Easter." So the church was going to have an auction. You know what an auction is? That's where they take things and they sell it and they make money. And when people buy things, then they take the money and they're able to do things. And they wanted to do things for the church to get it ready for Easter. That same day, Miss Wanda helped her mamma get out her hats and put them in the bed, on the bed and in the dressing table. Then Miss Fanny closed the bedroom door. "Lord," she said aloud, "I'd appreciate it if you'd help me make the best choice." She always talked to the Lord as if he was right there. There she is going into her room. She's going to decide which hat to give to the church. Oh my goodness, look, this page is just full of Miss Fanny looking at all of her hats. Wow. She does have a lot of hats, doesn't she? Which one do you think she'll pick? There's lots of them. Let's see. Miss Fanny walked around the room and looked at each one of her hats. The green velour with the fancy pen was very, very old and still very beautiful. During the terrible flood of 1916, she had crossed the swollen river on a ferry to visit her mother and father. As she stood at the rail holding on to her beautiful hat, a house had floated by, almost close enough to touch. There she is holding that hat and thinking about that memory of the flood. She had a memory with that hat. And over there was her wide-brimmed felt with the gleaming black feather. Ha! That feather had come from the tail of a hawk that was trying to kill her hens. She had grabbed that hawk around the neck, and before you could say doodly squat, the hawk could never bother her chickens again. She got that black feather from a hawk. Then Miss Fanny picked up the hat made of soft brown velvet and stroked it. It had always reminded her of Flower, her grandmother's cow. When Miss Fanny was just 7 years old, she had started milking the brown, velvety, soft Flower. Each evening she carried the milk to the spring in a bucket and set it into the ice water to keep it cool. Later, her mamma would pour the milk into a churn, and Miss Fanny would churn it into butter, just like you buy in the store, except it was better. She realized that each one of her hats were like a friend, and each one brought back special memories. There's her memory about the cow. All of her hats have a memory. Finally, Miss Fanny came to her most favorite hat of all, the pink straw with silk roses. She had worn it every Easter Sunday for 35 years, and it always made her feel brand new, like Easter itself. But she wasn't the only one who thought it was special. Everyone at church looked for that pink hat on Easter Sunday just as they looked for the tulips and daffodils to bloom in the spring. There's Miss Fanny sitting at church with her pink straw hat with the roses. And everybody knew if it was Easter, Miss Fanny was wearing that hat, right? Miss Fanny took the pink straw out of its round box and put it on. Even though she was wearing her oldest house dress with the torn pocket, she looked in the mirror and sighed. In her heart, she did not want to give her hat away. Not at all. She took a deep breath and repeated her favorite Bible verse. As she placed that hat back in the round box, she said, "You know, that hat could really raise a lot of money." And she put the lid on the box and she said, "Maybe it could help fix our old pipe organ." As she tied the string around the lid, she said, "Why, it could probably mend the crack in the church bell or put on a whole new roof." Suddenly, she discovered that she was very, very excited. She was excited about giving away her hat. At the church auction, the handsome young preacher held up the pink hat with roses and looked around. "What am I bid for Miss Fanny's famous hat?" The bidding took off lickety-split. At last, here was something more exciting to bid on than a set of kitchen canisters or an umbrella stand. Bang went the gavel. Sold to the lady in the front row. The lady in the front row gave the preacher a check and seemed very, very pleased with herself. "Huh! That's a lot of money!" exclaimed Miss Wanda, who was impressed. Miss Fanny clapped her hands. It was enough to really get things fixed around here. She knew that she would not miss her favorite hat one bit, but she did wonder which hat she was going to wear on Easter morning. Remember, she always wore that hat on Easter morning, and now she didn't have it. On Easter Sunday, Miss Fanny got up very early. She sat on the side of her bed and took the curlers out of her hair. Although she thought and thought, she didn't have the slightest idea which hat she was going to wear. Her red velvet with the big feather was too hot, and her green velour with the fancy pin, it was too wintry. And then there was no use to even think about the pink straw, which of course would have been just right. When it was time to leave for church, Miss Fanny looked beautiful. She was wearing her best dress, which was the color of pale green apples. She was also wearing her best jewelry, her best gloves, and a white corsage. A corsage is a flower a lady wears. "It's time to go," said Miss Fanny, picking up her cane and taking Miss Wanda's arm. Miss Wanda could not believe her eyes. Her mamma was going out the door without wearing any hat at all. Miss Fanny was not going to wear a hat. She always wore hats, didn't she? When they arrived at church, Miss Fanny couldn't believe her eyes. On either side of the freshly painted church, someone had planted beds of glorious pink roses. Pink roses were also planted along the walkway, under the stained glass windows, and in front of the old fence by the street. "Oh, Mama," said Miss Wanda, it looks just like your pink hat. Look at the flowers there at the church. It did look like Miss Fanny's hat. The handsome young preacher greeted them on the steps and gave each one a big hug. "We hope you're pleased, Miss Fanny. We were able to patch the bell and fix the organ, and your beautiful hat made it possible to buy all of these roses." As Miss Fanny laughed with delight, the people didn't see an old woman at all. What they saw was a young girl with her hair as soft as the feathers of a dove. Look at them all sitting there looking at Miss Fanny, who was so happy. She wasn't sad she didn't have a hat. She was happy that her hat was able to do that, to get that money for the church. Now, when people pass the little white church, they think they're seeing a garden of dazzling pink roses. But what they're really seeing is Miss Fanny's hat, and it will always, always be her favorite. Look at the church there with the pink roses, just like Miss Fanny's hat. Isn't that a fun story? You know, I like that story because it tells about Miss Fanny and how she always wore that special hat at Easter. And then she didn't, but she wasn't sad. She liked the memory she had of it, but she was okay with something new. Can I tell you something? This Easter is probably not going to be like other Easters that we had. When I was a little girl, and on Easter, we would have new dresses, real fancy, usually frilly dresses, frilly, like with lace and things. And lots of times we'd have an Easter bonnet, a hat, and we wore gloves, and we had new shoes with lacy socks. Boys would have suits and ties, and we would all dress up and go to church in our Sunday best, brand new clothes. In fact, my mom and my sister and I, we would always wear a corsage. My dad would always buy us a corsage to wear, so we had a flower pinned to our dress. And that was always Easter to me. We always did that every Easter. We would go to church and celebrate Easter dressed up like that. As we got older, women stopped wearing hats all the time to church, and we stopped wearing gloves, and women even stopped wearing corsages. But that didn't change Easter. Easter doesn't look the same today as it did to me when I was a kid, but doesn't change what Easter is. Because Easter is a wonderful story, a true story out of the Bible about how Jesus died on a cross, but on Easter Sunday, he rose again. He came back to life so we would one day get to live with him forever. It's a great story, and that story never changes, although Easter changes. And so, family and friends, as this Easter comes this year, and it's going to look different than it has any other time before, that's just the day we're in right now. That doesn't change the story. That Jesus loves you so much that he died on the cross, and 3 days later, he rose again for you and for me because of his great love for us. So don't let Easter being different change the wonderful story that what it brings. Just as Jesus loves you, Miss Kim loves you very much. Be safe. Have a very happy Easter, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.